Hey guys, Arsulis here with another video on the Cloze Overlapper add-on for Anki. Just to give you a quick recap of the first video, the Cloze Overlapper add-on for Anki is a great way to memorize lists, enumerations, or any type of other sequences. Now these things are generally difficult to memorize on flashcards, and the way the add-on works is by using the so-called link method, where each of the items serves as a prompt for the next one, and you're only presented with a number of items, not the entire list at once. And the method it utilizes to generate these cards is overlapping close deletions, which is similar to the method proposed by Piotr Wozniak in his 20 Rules of Formulating Knowledge, which is pretty much one of the standard reads for anyone who wants to familiarize with themselves how to create flashcards effectively. And one of the main things he stated is that the best way to really memorize enumerations, if you have to, is to use some kind of overlapping prompt, and that's exactly what the add-on does. And the main strength really of the add-on is that it can be completely freely configured to fit a variety of use cases, so you can customize the length of the prompts, the length of the context cues, etc. Just to give you a quick example of a type of card and how it would look like, we have the viral replication here, and as you can see, walking through each of these items, we always have a context cue, we have the prompt itself, and a context cue after it, which I think is a very powerful learn to study lists like this. Okay, let's go over to the actual use of the add-on and let's start by how to add our nodes. Now, the thing you need to know about the add-on, first of all, is that for it to work, it needs to use a specific node type, which is called the Cloze Overlapping node type. And this one is generated automatically when installing the add-on, so you don't have to worry about configuring it manually. So the only thing you have to do is just go ahead and select it. And then there are a number of ways you can actually add these the nodes to your collection, or a number of ways you can generate the cards. The first option, which is the easiest one out of all, is if you've got a list of pre-formatted items where each of the item is listed on one line of your text, then you can simply just take that text and copy and paste it into the original field. You could then provide a number of other information. You can just put in a title if you'd like. You can also fill out the remarks and sources field, the same fields you'd find on the image occlusion add-on if you used that. But generally speaking, the only thing you have to fill out is the original field, and if you then click on the Add Nodes button, then the add-on will automatically generate those cards for you. And the cards by default use this setting where each of the items is contexted by the one preceding it. So this is the standard setting that the add-on will use if you don't provide any additional settings at all. Okay, let's go back to the editor and just showcase some more information about this. That was the first way how you can add your cards. The second important thing you need to know is that you can actually preview any of the cards you generate. So let's go ahead and do the same thing again, paste in our items here and also fill out the title. And if you now click on the button up here, which is one of the add-ons buttons that gets added, one of the buttons that the add-on will add to the panel above, then that will generate a preview of all of the close deletions that will be generated on your cards. And as you can see, they will appear on the node itself. So just some quick technical information on why this is the way it is. The way Anki works is that the only method you can use to generate overlapping close deletions is by using multiple different fields and setting up different close deletions for each of these fields. Now, I could have gone in and just edited the templating code and just found a different way to do this without having the need for these fields, but the disadvantage of that approach would have been that the cards would not have been compatible with Anki Web, with Anki Mobile or Anki Droid. So I opted for going with this way, which might not be as pretty, but it works on all platforms, so that's the important thing. One disadvantage of this is that you are limited in the number of items you can actually occlude in a list, the limited number of items you can close delete. By default, the node type comes with 20 different text fields. I've just added the 21st a moment ago. So by default, you can only create cards with up to 20 items each. I think that should be sufficient for most use cases. If your list has more than 20 items, then it might actually make up to split it up. That might actually make sense to split it up, I mean. But you can extend this if you'd like. You can just go into the fields menu and just add some additional text fields. And as soon as you've done that, you then just have to go into the template view. So you just have to click on the cards button, and on the front and back template you then just have to put in your extra fields. So if you've added a text 22 field, you would just have to copy this, for instance, and then just paste in your text 22 field. So this is extendable. If you really need those extra slots to put in some longer lists, then you can easily customize the add-on. It will automatically detect how many text fields are available and use that number for its list generations. Good. So that's as far as that's concerned. Let's go over the next method of actually creating these close definitions, and that's by supplying some custom markers to identify which parts of a text you'd like to close. So if you've got a text like this, which is all in one line, where you don't just have a simple list of items, what you can do is just use the regular close deletion shortcut, which is Ctrl+Shift+C, to mark the areas that you'd like to be closed on your cards. And you can also use the extension of that hotkey, so you can use Ctrl+Shift+Alt+C, and that will then add a new mark which uses the same index as the one before. So if you use something like this, then you know that these two items will always appear at the same time. To confirm this, let's go back and click the close generation button up here, and as you can see, these two will appear at the same time, right here and right here. This syntax also supports hints, so if you'd like to add a hint to your nodes, you can once again just use this period here, this colon I mean, sorry, and if we now click on the preview button up here again, you'll see that it actually appears as a hint on your field. So that's the second way you can add your closed deletions. And there's also another hotkey which I'd like to demonstrate. If you got a case like this where you have a number of lists which you'd like to all include on one specific card, one way you could deal with this is to just go ahead and use the hotkey on each of these items, but this could take some time. So instead what you can do is just mark the entire list and then use the Ctrl+Shift+D hotkey to apply one closed deletion per line. So that's the other way you can perform this. And let's repeat the same for these below, but in this case we'll be using Ctrl+Shift+Alt+D, and what will happen with this is that it uses the same method as the regular close hotkey, so it just applies the same index as the item before it. So if you'd like to group some items together, just use that variation of the hotkey. Okay, so that's as far as the custom definitions for the hotkeys are concerned. Maybe one important point as far as list handling is concerned. So if you use the Format Power Pack add-on, or the Power Format Pad I think it's called, which is a great add-on by the way, you should definitely check it out, then you can actually add bulleted lists and numbered lists to your cards. And the add-on also supports these. So if you got a bullet point list like this one, and then once again hit the node generation hotkey, then it will automatically detect that your items are formatted as a list, and it will also preserve that list. And the same thing applies if you use a numbered list as well. So let's demonstrate this. There we go. However, one of the important things with this is that it doesn't support sublists. So if you got a sublist like this one and then hit the key again, you'll see that it will be generating all of these items on the same level. So if you're using sublists, or if you're using more complex HTML, or other formatting, I mean, like for instance if you bold something or use different colors or apply italics, then the best way to handle this is to just use the normal close definition hotkey, which is Ctrl+Shift+C, which you can then apply to each of these items individually. And by using that method, the formatting, or at least most of the formatting, should then be preserved when generating your different close deletions. So anytime, that's pretty much the take-home message here, is anytime you use any kind of complex formatting, like different fonts and different bolded areas in your notes, etc., or tables, for instance, in that case, it's always best to just use the Control plus Shift plus C hotkey. For anything else, for just items that are just a normal list like this, or items that are a bullet point list or a numbered list, then you can just use the normal type of adding the cards. So you just put in your list and then hit the add key, and the add-on will automatically take care of creating the close deletions for you. And one last thing is, there is also a shorthand if you would like to generate the list directly without having to use any other add-on. You just can use the hotkey Control plus Alt plus Shift plus period, and that will both apply a list to your items, and it will also generate a preview of them. And if you'd like to do this with a bullet point list, then you can do the same with Control plus Alt plus Shift plus comma, and once again you see that that list will be generated and also be applied on all of the cards. So these are just minor things, but I think they could help you generate your cards quicker, so I thought I'd mention them. Great, so that's as far as generating the cards are concerned. The next part of the video will be about configuring how the cards should be generated, which settings should be used for the context cues and the prompts. And for this, let's go back into the editor and we'll just add the same list again, or maybe not, let's add something different so that it's clearer. So let's just use an alphabetical array of items. So by default, if you don't supply any settings at all, then using the generation key or adding your notes will generate this type of note, as I've said before, where you just have one context item for each of the prompts you'll see. To customize this, you just have to click on the button up here, which is the settings, the node specific settings menu. And as you can see, there are a lot of things you can customize in here. The context before each item, so let's set this to 2, and you'll see we now have 2 items before each. These items build up at the start, so you don't have context before it, but as you go along, then you'll see that you now have 2 context items for each of these cards. The same applies to the context after the card, so let's set this to 2 as well. And as you can see, our items now have a context of 2 cues before after it. You can also, of course, customize the prompt length. So if we set this to 2, we now have a symmetrical setup where we have 2 prompts before the items, then 2 items we're question about, and then last but not least the 2 context cues after the items. And then as far as the other settings are concerned, there are more specific stuff, more special stuff. For instance, whether or not you'd like to see some context for the first and last item. So in this case, for instance, we have these 2 prompts at the start, but there will also be neighbored by 2 context cues, and we might not like that. We might want to have the first items or the first prompt or question stay individually without any type of hint. So we'll just use this option, and the same thing applies also for the last one. So having activated both of these options, you'll see that now the first and the last items are provided without any context at all. This can be useful in use cases where you just need to know the exact starting point and end point of a sequence. For instance, if you have a neuroanatomical pathway, you need to know exactly what comes first and last without necessarily knowing anything else about the sequence at all. So this is a great way to just study the first item and the last one. The other thing you can customize in here is if you got a lot of close prompts, then the question is, how do you start? Do you just present all of them at once, like this? So for instance, if we got a prompt which extends to 4 items, then on the first cut we'd already be asked about all of the 4, which can be difficult. So you can customize this by using the option right here, the third option, and this means that the start and end of the sequence of notes will be gradual. So instead of being prompted for 4 prompts right at the start, you're first prompted with 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. So it slowly builds up to the entire number of prompts, then stays that way, and then at the back of the card it goes, or at the back of the number of cards, then goes back to 3, 2, and 1, as you would expect, pretty much vice versa of what happened at the start. So that's what these settings do. Okay, so that's as far as the options menu is concerned. All of these options can also be supplied manually by using the settings field down here. If you don't want to invoke the options dialog, you can just use that. But of course, you can just invoke it with a hotkey actually. So you can use you can use Alt plus Shift plus O to also invoke the option. So usually this is the faster option. But if you just like to customize one or two things, then you can of course use these settings directly. And the settings are they're also pretty. They can also parse a variety of different types of input. So for instance, if you'd only like to customize the prompt length without customizing anything else, you can just put in one number, and if you then use the generation, you'll see that it will just modify that setting while using the defaults for any of the other settings. And it also works with two numbers. So if you'd like to just specify the context length and the length of the prompt, then once again you could just use two items, and this will, as you can see, this will then generate a configuration where you have one prompt and two context cues on each side. So yeah, this field is pretty forgiving for so you can enter pretty much anything and it will still find a way to generate something sensible. Okay, so that's as far as the node-specific settings are concerned. Let's go back to the overview and let's now cover how to edit nodes. This is very easy. It's the same way as when adding nodes for the most part. So if you're reviewing something and would like to change something, you just go into Edit and to the editor, which you can of course invoke by using the Edit button or using the Edit key, which is E. And anything you change while this editor is open will then be applied to the cards as soon as you close it. So just change something, and as you can see now, these items are now gone that were here previously. So that's how this works when you're editing a card from the reviewer. This is somewhat different if you're in the browser. Now, because the browser doesn't really have a confirmation button that would say close or OK, what you need to do when you edit something in here is to use the close generation button we saw before. So if you edit something, add an item or whatever, then you'll have to use the button up here to let the add-on generate the updated cards. Now, as with all of the close node types, also Anki's regular close type, if you delete a close card, or rather delete the item associated with it, then the card will be empty, like this one for instance. And because that's the case, you should know that you can remove these empty cards just by going to Tools, Empty Cards, and Anki then will list whatever is empty and then let you delete those. That's how closes work also without the add-on. So that's just how the node type works, so don't worry. Okay, so that's as far as editing nodes is concerned. Let's then go over to the last part of the video, which is how to configure the add-on globally, how to set up default options. And for that we will be going into the Tools menu, and just like with image occlusion, there will appear an entry which says Options, Cloze Overlapper Options. And as you can see, the first tab of this options menu just contains a number of options related to card generation. It's the same type of settings you saw previously with the node settings, only that this dialog will set these globally for all items. So you can use this to set up the defaults you'd like to use on all of the nodes you generate as long as you don't provide any node-specific options. Then let's go over to the next tab, and this contains some more advanced stuff. The first one is how scheduling is modified. So in order to understand this, you need to know that Anki by default tries to space apart cards that belong to the same node as far as possible from each other. And that makes sense because Anki for the most part is designed for language learning, and one of the most common type of node you will find there is a front and back card, where you've got the front to back and back to front cards. And these two cards should not appear on the same day, right? Because they give away each other. So that's why Anki tries to space them apart as far as possible. But this applies to all node types that use multiple cards. And for that reason, I decided to implement a way to bypass the setting specifically for the Cloze Overlapper node type. And by default, the setting is only bypassed for new types, for new cards, and but you can also activate the same setting for reviews. And this can be important under some circumstances. For instance, if you've got only 3 weeks to prepare an exam and you've got lists or items added via overlapping close deletions that contain maybe 20 list items, then normally what Anki would do is it will only present you with one card out of all of these sets for each day. So it would take you 20 days to just see all of the new cards associated with that, which of course it's an issue, right? If you don't have enough time, it can't be manageable. It's not manageable with that default option. So for that reason, this option is active by default. And what this also does, which Anki does not do by itself, is it allows you to review each of these cards in sequence, so that you see each of the cards belonging to that specific node one after the next. Because when using Anki normally, even if you disable sibling burying for the entire deck, which is something you can do, so you can actually disable this option, but just for one deck at a time. But if you do this for the entire deck, even then, Anki will still try to space apart the items so that you never see them in the exact order they were added, but rather see them interleaved with other nodes and other cards, which can be a disadvantage. Well, in any case, these options are here, so you can use them if you'd like and customize. Just think about whether or not you need them. One important thing, though, is that they only work on the desktop version of Anki, and that's because I can't modify the scheduling on the other apps. They don't have any add-on support, so that's why that is. But if you'd like to use another workaround, what you could do is just create a specific deck simply for overlapping close deletions, and then just set it up so that it doesn't have any sibling burying at all. That's what you could do, and that should also work then on the mobile cards, on the mobile apps. Now, other than that, of course, the add-on is fully compatible with all of the mobile apps. All of the cards will work without any issues, so don't worry. It's just the scheduling that it doesn't work as well as it does on the desktop version. Okay, as far as these other options here are concerned, you first have a number of field names that you can customize only by using this options dialog, and that's because the add-on needs to know which field name is assigned which function. So if you'd like to translate them to your own language or do anything else, you can use this dialog right here to rename them. And the last option allows you to define a number of additional node types where the add-on should be active, and this could be useful, for instance, if you'd like to clone the default node type and add some special formatting to it, or maybe you like to import cards from other people, from your friends, and when doing that, as you might know, the node types get renamed by Anki, so they don't just say close overlapping, but they might say close overlapping and then some gibberish behind it. And if that's the case, then you can still review the cards, of course, but if you then go ahead and try to edit them using the add-on will not recognize them as the regular node type, or as a node type the add-on should work on. So if that's the case, you can just go ahead and place those names, those node type names inside this field. And it works just like with image occlusion. It's just a list which is separated by commas. So if we had any type of node type like this one, you could just put it in right here, and the add-on will then recognize it when trying to edit cards or creating new ones based on that node type. Okay, so that's as far as that's concerned. And the third tab is contains a number of links, for instance, to this tutorial series, but also to the wiki section on GitHub. This is a good resource, will be especially a good resource as time moves on, because I won't be able to update these videos. So if anything changes about the add-on, if there are any new features or functions, you should definitely check that wiki section out, which will probably explain them in great detail. Okay, I think that has been everything I wanted to cover. This video is already too long than I'd like, but still I think this was a good overview of the usage of the add-on. Now, once again, as I've said before, I think that this add-on really has the potential of greatly enhancing your studying experience, especially if you're studying medicine or any type of other subject that comes with a lot of different lists inside of it. So I think you should definitely give it a try. Alright guys, thanks for watching, thanks for keeping with this series. Make sure to subscribe to this channel. I'll see if I can upload some more videos on other add-ons soon. Until then, I wish you good luck with your studies, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.